Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Oliver and Company, which came out in 1988 and is the 8th and final film in Disney's Bronze Age. Yes, at long last, we are out of this tunnel, which, I gotta say, was a lot more interesting than it was actually dark. When I started the Bronze Age, with the exception of Winnie the Pooh and the Great Mouse Detective, I was kind of dreading having to visit these movies, some of them for the very first time. And I gotta say, it's just been more interesting than it has been dreadful. But anyway, we are at the end of the Bronze Age with this movie. It's pretty much a modern retelling of the Charles Dickens book, Oliver and Company. The movie opens up with a litter of kittens being adopted. All of them live in this box, and each of them are taken but one. This is Oliver, a young orange cat who suddenly has to fend for himself in the streets of New York City. But soon he finds himself adopted by a group of dogs, with their leader being Dodger, voiced by Billy Joel. They are the pets of this homeless guy who's supposedly working for a loan shark. And in the middle of these dogs and their master trying to collect loans for this loan shark, Oliver is adopted by a young girl, and now there's the confliction of, do we get Oliver back or do we just leave him there since he seems to have a better life than he did with us? This is another one of those movies that I've seen clips of growing up, and I especially remember that Billy Joel song, "Why Should I Worry?" And that's all I'm going to sing of that song because, YouTube's bullshit copyright system. But I've never watched this movie from beginning to end, until just now for this review, and it's okay. I mean, it kind of reminds me in a way of 101 Dalmatians, where it has an animation style to it that's kind of rough. I mean, it's a lot smoother and cleaner than it is with 101 Dalmatians because there's an almost 30-year time gap between two movies. But the backgrounds definitely have this weird, unfinished and rough look to them, which in normal circumstances would be a criticism, but for some reason, like with 101 Dalmatians, the weird looks for the backgrounds in this movie kind of fit the tone. And the animation on the main characters is pretty decent. It's definitely a step down from The Black Cauldron and The Great Mouse Detective, but it's still nice. There's nothing about the animation, at least on the main characters, that looks unimaginative or downright incompetent. No, the incompetence in terms of animation comes in with the extras of this movie. Now, I say incompetence, and that's probably being too harsh, because I'm sure it was more budgetary restraints than actual ineptness in terms of animation. But I gotta say, when this movie started and we saw a bunch of extras walking around New York City, there is one guy that's supposed to be walking on the street, but he's standing in place as he's moving, and the animation is very choppy, and he just kind of jumps around in terms of this one spot that he's in. And I watched that and went, damn, this sucks. And this is not a good first impression for me watching this movie from beginning to end. But thankfully, that's the only big flaw when it comes to the animation of this movie. Everything else is perfectly fine. And the characters themselves are just fine. Oliver is that innocent little kid who is wide-eyed and adventurous. Dodger is voiced by Billy Joel, as I mentioned beforehand, and there's not a whole lot to him. Maybe the most interesting characters in this movie are a little chihuahua voiced by Cheech Marin, because he's just so energetic. He's pretty much the embodiment of an actual chihuahua, where they think they're tough and they think they can take on anyone who comes their path, but really they're just small and adorable because they try to act as tough as they are. The other memorable character of the movie for me is Bette Midler's poodle character, because there's something just so egotistical and so just enjoyable about this character, who is so self-centered and just doesn't want anything to do with Oliver being in her life. And she's just entertaining to watch. The other characters, while not unlikable at all, they're not that interesting. And the most uninteresting character of the movie has to be the actual loan shark himself. The only thing that you really remember about this character is the way he dies, and the way his dogs die. There are some brutal deaths when it comes to the villains. One of his dogs falls onto the tracks of the subway and gets electrocuted, and the actual villain himself is driving his car on the subway tracks, and then goes into a head-on collision with an oncoming subway and his car explodes. You don't see his body or anything because, you know, it's a Disney movie and they can't actually show you that, but you see an explosion and you know right there, there's no escaping that. Unless you're Han from Fast and the Furious, you ain't escaping that explosion. There's nothing about this movie that I would say is awful or even bad, but at the same time, there's nothing about it that really sticks out to me. The songs, except for Why Should I Worry, are not that memorable. Most of the characters are just forgettable. The story is pretty basic and doesn't really lend itself to any surprises. I mean, to be honest, the only surprising thing about this movie was finding out that James Mangold was a co-writer on this, and that this was the first movie he worked on. Seriously, once this movie ended and the credits started rolling, I thought to myself, I mean, it was fine. I'll probably never rewatch it again. And then his name pops up in the writing credits. I'm like, whoa, 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 hold up. Hold up. Is that the James Mangold there? The same James Mangold of Copland, Girl Interrupted, Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, Logan, Ford v Ferrari, and the upcoming Indiana Jones 5? And I looked it up, and yeah, that is the very same James Mangold. The other thing that kind of sticks out to me about this movie, and it's not really even towards the movie itself, but more of the movie that came out the same weekend. The Land Before Time is a much better film than this. Both these movies were released on the exact same weekend. Oliver and Company was the bigger hit, making $5 million more than The Land Before Time. But The Land Before Time, I think, is a movie that is just more memorable, it's more entertaining, it's more heartfelt, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So if there's anything that'll even make me think about Oliver and Company again, it's the fact that a superior animated movie came out the same weekend. Didn't do as well as Oliver and Company, but I feel like time has been more kind to The Land Before Time than Oliver and Company. As a rating, I'd say watch at your own risk. It's not awful, it's not terrible or even bad, but there's so little about it that really sticks in my head. It might be worth watching, especially if you have kids, but this is not a Disney movie that I would strongly recommend. And there you go, that's my review for Oliver and Company, and we are officially done with the Bronze Age. And because of that, we are finally getting into the Disney era that is of my generation. The Disney era that I think you guys have been waiting for me to get to. Next week we are going to finally kick off the Disney Renaissance with my review for The Little Mermaid. They just finished wrapping production on the live-action remake that's coming out next year, whenever it's coming out. It's the perfect timing for me to actually talk about this movie. And yeah, we'll just get into the Disney Renaissance next week. But first I want to know what you guys think about Oliver and Company. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just want to say thank you all for watching my review for Oliver and Company. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.